Hello and welcome back everyone to a new episode of Loremaster Leveling, here with me, Sneaky Bard. We are finally in the Eastern Plaguelands. Took me a bit because there was some ganking going on the way there, so yeah, pretty much managed to live through what I was telling in the last episode might be, well, not last episode, but the one before that, might be the bad consequences for PvP in the level scale zones, so... But hey, it wasn't too bad. I managed to get here quite safely, and I think the person who was ganking me is no longer chasing me, so we should be fine. So what's the plan for this episode, apart from, you know, doing some quests here with the weird paladin duo in the Eastern Plaguelands? Well, the plan is we will be talking a bit about Forsaken lore. Forsaken being something that we haven't talked about that much, and we'll start way at the beginning with the pre-creation of the Scourge. So to know how the Scourge was created, we know, okay, they want us to go, let's go up the river. The way the Scourge was created, we need to go back to the early lore of how the Horde was actually created, the first Horde basically, and that was, as you might well know, Ner'zhul, the Orc Shaman of the Shadow Moon clan, was contacted by Kil'jaeden in the form of his deceased wife, and tricked into sort of corrupting the Orcs, making them more violent and waging war against the Draenei. Kil'jaeden obviously wanting to kill all the Draenei and his brother Valen for their treachery in not accepting Sargeras' offer. But what ended up happening in the end was that Kil'jaeden pushed Ner'zhul a bit too much, and Ner'zhul started to doubt whether Kil'jaeden was actually, you know, having a pact with him was a good idea, basically. So he basically betrayed Kil'jaeden, but was then betrayed by his own apprentice, Gul'dan. Oh dear, we pulled something here. Who then took control of the Horde from him. And when the Horde then started assaulting Azeroth, lots of things started going a bit badly in the campaign after the fall of Stormwind and everything. And Ner'zhul saw his chance there. Having been more or less exiled to Outlands, he, at the point where Khadgar and the rest, the Sons of Lothar, came to Outlands, devised a plan to gather more and more power by opening these portals to different worlds, which ended up destroying Outland completely. And when he noticed that opening up all these portals would destroy Outland, he decided to, well, let's jump into one of those and see where we land with his followers, basically. I mean, it can't be worse than this planet that is about to be ripped asunder and become what we know as Outland. Unluckily for him, obviously Kil'jaeden was on the other side in the Twisting Nether, the portals leading through the Twisting Nether after all, since they're going to other planets, and ripped Ner'zhul's body asunder and only tormented his, well, kept his soul alive and tormented him until Ner'zhul swore, oh dear, there's an alliance player, to serve Kil'jaeden again. So what Kil'jaeden then did was he bound Ner'zhul's spirit into a hunk of ice and threw it down onto Azeroth, where it landed in Northrend and became the Frozen Throne. And during his time in the hunk of ice, Ner'zhul learned from Tichondrius, the Dreadlord and Lord of the Scourge, how to exercise his powers of necromancy. After all, Gul'dan had already dabbled into necromancy, so this wasn't something that was completely new to Ner'zhul, who was also a warlock in his own right. And Ner'zhul started to slowly dominate the human settlements, the Nerubians, as we see here as well, and expand all over Northrend. Okay, we got the dwarf here, and do his own thing. And with that, basically what happened was that the Cult of the Damned was formed, and Kel'Thuzad, our lovely boss from Naxxramas, who was a Archmage of Dalaran, and very interested in necromancy, kept hearing Ner'zhul's whispers for powerful inhabitants of Azeroth, basically, that he could corrupt. Now, Kel'Thuzad obviously had been studying necromancy, and had been kicked out of Dalaran for doing so because studying necromancy was considered forbidden. Raising the dead is not very nice after all. And he then decided, well, I'm going to follow this voice north that I keep hearing. And there he found the Lich King, Ner'zhul, who gave him unimaginable power. Well, lots of power. No, maybe not unimaginable, but lots of power anyway. And Kel'Thuzad found the Cult of the Damned. Now this led to him having the prime mission of spreading the plague through Lordaeron. And that led him into conflict with Uthrur, the Lightbringer, and Arthas Menethil, King Tyrannus' son, and the later Lich King. And what Arthas did was he killed Kel'Thuzad at one point, but then, because he had already managed to, inflict Stratholme with a plague, Arthas basically called Stratholme, and it became his point of no return. Basically, Arthas had been corrupted, and all he wanted to do was destroy this new evil that kept spreading the plague and the undead through Lordaeron, namely Ner'zhul. Now, Ner'zhul tricked Arthas then to obviously find Frostmourne in Northrend and become his most powerful Death Knight champion. And that's how the Forsaken came to be. The Forsaken essentially being the former inhabitants of both Lordaeron and Quel'Thalas, mostly Lordaeron though, because when Arthas came back as a Death Knight, he, as we all know from that wonderful cinematic from Warcraft 3, decided to, as his first act of coming back, kill his own father and reclaim the throne as his own. And with his two lieutenants who used to teach him how to fight, I don't remember what they're called, but they're bosses in Halls of Reflection, and the names start with F and M. Yes, very specific, I know. Anyway, he decided then to cull the entirety of Lordaeron and raise its inhabitants as undead. And that's where you have the Forsaken. And that's why the Eastern and Western Plaguelands became known as the Eastern and Western Plaguelands, because this is what used to be Lordaeron, basically. Humanity's heartland after Stormwind was sacked by the Orcs. So humans have basically done a full reverse, where you used to have two powerful human kingdoms, Stormwind and Lordaeron, and a couple of other ones that were not quite as powerful, like, say, Alterac, Arathor, Stromgarde, Gilneas. The list goes on. And then with the sacking of Stormwind, obviously Lordaeron became preeminent and the leader of the alliance. Then Lordaeron was sacked by Arthas and Stormwind was rebuilt, so Stormwind got to lead the new alliance, basically. But how did the Forsaken come to be? Because we only have now the Scourge on the scene, so to speak. There are no Forsaken, there's only the Scourge. So Arthas marches into Quel'Thalas, the elven homeland, to use the Sunwell to reanimate Kel'Thuzad as a Lich, because he has been tasked by Ner'zhul, who further has been tasked by Archimonde, to retrieve some, well, very powerful artifacts from Dalaran to summon Sargeras into the world. And so Arthas rampages through Quel'Thalas, and in trying to get past the wards that the elves have put up to make sure that nobody trespasses into their land, he comes upon Darkhan, the betrayer, who willingly sells out his own kind and opens the gate for the Scourge to come through. Sylvanas, obviously, as a courageous ranger general, what she does is she tries to stop this, but to no avail. Arthas promptly kills her and raises her as his Banshee Queen. Now, Sylvanas has always resented this, even though she, as a mindless undead crony, never had a will of her own. But what ended up happening was that when Arthas rampaged through... Oh, yeah, are we dying? Rampaged through Quel'Thalas. He didn't end up killing all the Blood Elves, so say Kel'Thas was still at Dalaran and came back and actually formed the Blood Elves this way when he saw what Arthas had done to the elves, and he swore revenge. And he ended up teaming up, okay, we finished the quest, teaming up with Illidan Stormrage. And what Illidan wanted was essentially to make sure that the Burning Legion didn't succeed. We know this from this expansion. This has been his mission the entire time. And he traveled then to Northrend to try and basically shatter Ner'zhul's hunk of ice. Arthas, sensing the danger to his master, came to stop Illidan. They had a duel. Arthas won, and then he decided to merge with Ner'zhul, and at some point during this, Ner'zhul was weakened, and I believe this was because of Illidan's advance, and this allowed Sylvanas to gain some modicum of self-control. And before Arthas actually went to Northrend, sorry, this is going a bit chronologically, we're hopping around a bit, but before he went to Northrend, Sylvanas managed to extort him into giving back her body, and she got her body back, and and basically freed a bunch of the Scourge to join with her and in finding a renegade faction within the undead that came to be known as the Forsaken, and they fear Arthas, or the Lich King in general, like nothing else. If he were to ever gain control of them, they would not have any like identity left. They couldn't think for themselves, and they don't want to become like that. Banshee spells, yes, Sylvanas indeed, like that again. So that is where the Forsaken's kind of manic obsession almost with the Lich King and the Scourge comes from, because they know what it's like to be a Scourge, and they don't want to repeat that. So that is essentially the backstory of the Forsaken. And then we obviously know that with the campaign in Northrend during Wrath of the Lich King, they finally managed to figure out how to become a race that could procreate with the help of the Valkyrs. A lot of the Valkyrs, as we we haven't seen, but as you see if you do the Silver Pine questline, die in reanimating Sylvanas after she's killed by Godfrey. So this despawned. So the Forsaken still have a problem with procreation. We see that in Legion still, where Sylvanas is trying to hunt for some way to make sure her race doesn't die out due to, you know, not being able to create new Forsaken. And yeah, any other important figures within the Forsaken that we haven't talked about? I mean, the Dreadlords in general are essentially the originators of necromancy, and we had, I'm trying to think of his name, Battle of the Undercity, Putricide had a Dreadlord that betrayed him. It wasn't Balnazar, it wasn't Mal'Ganis, was it Tichondrius? I don't know, because this was also one thing where the Dreadlords were there to keep an eye on Ner'zhul so he wouldn't betray Kil'jaeden again, but what Sylvanas managed to do was to actually ally one of them, and I think it was Tichondrius, with her, which gave her immense like powerful peace to actually bargain for her and the other Forsaken's freedom with when she confronted Arthas. Anything else that I might have forgotten? If I've forgotten something in regards to the Forsaken's backstory, then put that down in the comments, but I don't think I have. Let's see if we can't find some more Banshee bells while we're at it. I mean, Sylvanas herself, obviously, we know that she's a High Elf, and the reason why the Blood Elves and the Forsaken have a, at times, strained, but definitely more amicable relationship than the Forsaken have with the rest of the Horde is because a lot of them share, you know, blood ties. Not that the Forsaken really care about those, but it's still, you know, These are people from their past life. Okay, Banshee Bells are not here. So yeah, there's that. And obviously with Battle for Azeroth, we now also know from this backstory of the Forsaken why it is so important for humans to take back Lordaeron. It's seen as the crown jewel of humanity, the progenitor of what formed the alliance. I mean, without Lordaeron there wouldn't have been an alliance. We have to recall the first alliance being a purely human affair between all the various human kingdoms, minus Gilneas. Well, Gilneas joined it, but for shorter than most of the other human kingdoms. And the elves never were official parts of the alliance. They only sent support to the alliance during the second and first war. Well, second war, not the first one. We didn't have any elves back then supporting the humans. Alright, can we find more Banshee Bells? There we go, there's one. And we have about 3 minutes left on the timer. Finally, I've remembered to put it on. But yeah, anyone else that I might have forgotten in terms of the Forsaken backstory? I don't think so though. No. So let's focus on trying to find us. Oh, there we go. 2 other Banshee Bells. And then see where that leads us. And obviously with the rampage through Lordaeron, this is why Lordaeron looks all sickly and plagued, is because this became, from becoming a human base, this became base for the undead operations, and they just blighted the entirety of this land. And the Scarlet Crusade was formed in opposition against them by a group of humans that had managed to survive the undead rampage and were willing to do whatever it took to reclaim Lordaeron. And they also took their inspiration from Alonso's Foul's paladins that Alonso's Foul had created to battle the orcs. So Uther the Lifebringer and all those were originally clerics from Northshire, I think, or at least they were an extension of that order, who were then taught how to fight and wield the light. And the Scarlet Crusade took that one step further, obviously, with the Ashbringer, where they sought to empower various weapons with the power of the light to fight the Scourge, so that anyone wielding one of these weapons could become a terror to the undead. The Discipline artifact weapon as well was a failed experimentation in this. Well, not necessarily failed, since it can actually be wielded by the Discipline priest as their artifact weapon. I don't remember what the Discipline artifact weapon was called now at the top of my hand. But yeah, basically it's a proto Ashbringer, as you want, or not proto Ashbringer, since the Ashbringer was already created, but another attempt at creating a similar weapon, but this time for a priest, obviously. Alright, so we found the Banshee Bells, and we will be getting an upgrade to our boots. Nice.
What? No tip?
And here we go. Wait, what? We are in combat? Okay, no, we're no longer in combat. Alright. So let's go and turn in the other quest over here, where we find Tarinar Sunstrike, our Blood Elf Paladin. I mean, we already found the Dwarf Paladin, had been captured by the Nerubians. Yeah, so Nerubians, if we're talking about Scourge and Forsaken anyway, the Nerubians were obviously an indigenous race to Northrend, who were, as I said, corrupted by Ner'zhul, and it was only with their help that Arthas actually managed to get in time to save Ner'zhul as thingamajig, what's his name? The leader of the Nerubians, you know, last boss in Azul Nerub, last boss in Trial of the Crusade, managed to help Arthas out by guiding him through the tunnels. I don't even have Atlas loot here, so I can't really check what his name was. Alright. Now, but I think this is it for the episode, so there's not that much more to talk about the undead. We can go a bit more into Cult of the Damned and Valkyries and other stuff that are tangentially related to them in the next episode. So as always, thank you for watching. My name's been Sneaky Bard. You've been absolutely awesome for watching the episode. Do remember, if you liked the episode, to give it a like and to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, bye bye.